What's up everybody, how's it going? It's Burke aka Dansgo8 here, and this is going to be a tutorial video designed to help you guys figure out what the Pbirdman mod is, how to install it, and some general tips that I have for you from more than 250 hours worth of testing and conversations with the man himself. There's going to be a lot of information in this video. TLDR, if you just want the download link and you don't really want to hear anything else and you want to jump straight in, then the link will be in the description and you can check that out, download it. There are some install notes that Pbirdman has written and you can kind of just get going and not have to really watch the rest of the video. But if you'd like some more information, some tips, some things that could be useful to you before you start your run, I think it would be a good idea to use the timestamps as well and to navigate your way through this video to find what you need. I wanted to make this so that we had a specific video that would contain the most recent updated patch of the Pbirdman mod. People could use the comment section to provide any like bug reports and any of that kind of stuff, and we needed like a nice sort of central hub for people to access the mod and for me to give a few pointers based on my experiences with it. So without much further ado, I'm going to get into it, and I hope you guys enjoy the video and it proves helpful. The first and most important question. Perhaps you stumbled across the Pbirdman mod on the channel or this video specifically, and obviously you're wondering what the hell is the Pbirdman mod. The Pbirdman mod was created by Peter Bird, known as Pbirdman on the internet. He's been working on and off since 2011 on this mod, and it's a solo project by him to try and give players a different experience for the gameplay of Final Fantasy X. It's designed to be a new type of challenge for people who are already familiar with the base game. Maybe you've completed it once or twice already, you've done the Dark Aeons and Penance, and you're looking for something a little bit different that's going to test you in a different way. In terms of its design philosophy, it gets more and more difficult as the game progresses, as it should. At the start, for maybe the first 5 or 10 hours, you're not going to notice any particularly drastic changes. It doesn't really throw you in off the deep end and expect you to come up with crazy strategies or grind for stats or anything like that for most of the early part of the playthrough. It's the kind of playthrough where, yes, there will be some grinding required at times even for the story, but in my opinion it's nothing super excessive, and I still think it should be accommodating for people who have varying levels of experience and knowledge about the game. So, in terms of what has changed, obviously the change list is absolutely enormous, so I'm not going to run through everything, but just as a general idea of the kind of things that you can expect, some of the gameplay elements are not going to be as you know them and as you remember them. So a couple of simple examples that I have is, for example, the haste status effect. In vanilla, if you have haste on a character, until that gets dispelled or taken away for whatever reason, it basically lasts for the entire battle, for as long as you want it to. But in the Pbirdman mod, haste is a finite positive status effect, so you find yourself needing to cast it more than once across a battle. So that's one example. Another is something like evade encounter, which was extremely useful and almost broken in the original game. Evade encounter is not something that you're going to have for the storyline of the game, during monster capturing, in the monster arena, and all that kind of stuff. So say goodbye to stuff like evade encounter, for example. The sphere grid will look a little bit different, so instead of MP plus 20 nodes being the standard, MP plus 10 will be the new standard. There is a different cap on what your maximum level of MP can be, so in terms of MP sort of replenishment and conservation, you have to think differently than you did in the vanilla playthrough. And aside from that aspect of it, of course there has been a fairly big overhaul on a lot of the bosses that you're going to encounter in the Pbirdman mod. But even with random encounters, you're going to see things that you've never seen before. An example is something like a monster will use a move called Fantasy Potion, and that will change the appearance and the stats of that particular monster. So there's a lot of interesting and cool stuff that you would have never seen before, and because of the differences in monster mechanics, stats, sometimes appearance, and the way the gameplay is structured, this is going to be a Final Fantasy X that you've never experienced before. Things like no sphere grid challenges, of course, they are sort of artificial, self-imposed challenges that you do to change up your gaming experience, and while they can be a lot of fun, the Pbirdman mod is a way to still have the main core of the game, still require you to sort of work on your stats and all of that kind of stuff, but it's going to challenge you in a way that you haven't been challenged before. So in general, that's the kind of thing that we're looking at here. In terms of how difficult it actually is, I would say it ranges from not much different to vanilla all the way up to things that would require even veterans of the game to really grind hard. And even after you grinded for a long time, you're still going to get multiple game overs on particular bosses. So it ranges from maybe like 2-3 out of 10 when you're starting out, like the first 5-10 hours maybe, all the way up to, of course, 10 out of 10 when you get to like towards the end of the storyline, some of the monster arena, the Dark Aeons, and Penance. So we have a system that gets progressively more difficult, and hopefully is going to cover most of the bases in terms of what you're looking for difficulty. But I'm hoping that for most players there is going to be a sweet spot somewhere during this playthrough where you're going to enjoy the grind, the struggle, the challenge, and there are going to be times when it maybe overpowers you, or times when you feel like it wasn't challenging enough. But I think overall as an experience it should cater to a lot of people's interests if you have managed to complete the game before and you do have some experience and knowledge with the game. So that's the gist of what the Pbirdman mod is, and in terms of what it is not, I think that's also important to cover. The Pbirdman mod is not designed to be this ultimate difficulty mod where you're thrown in off the deep end. The first dingo that you face in Besaid has 1,000,000 HP. It's this sort of linear, pretty lazy way of making the game more difficult by giving everything like, let's say, I don't know, times 10 more HP or double the strength or any of that kind of stuff. Yes, of course, enemies are going to have different stats to what you faced in the vanilla run, but I think Pbirdman's had a thoughtful approach where he's tried to challenge you not so much in terms of raw power and strength and HP and that kind of thing, but more in terms of the mechanics and taking away things that you might be used to using from your vanilla run and just forcing you to think outside the box and to struggle in ways that you wouldn't have struggled potentially, or win in ways you potentially wouldn't have in vanilla. So it's not designed to be the absolute hardest mod possible. Yes, towards the end of the story and when you get to like the Dark Aeons, deep into the monster arena, Penance, those guys are of course, you know, the top of the top. They are designed to be very difficult, multiple game overs, requiring big stats, the right items, the right equipment and all that kind of stuff. But it's not a mod that's designed to like crush you to a pulp the entire way through or anything like that. So I don't want people to get too scared by it. I do think it's a mod that if you've completed Final Fantasy X once, I do think it's worth trying just to see how far you can get before it starts to overwhelm you. But it is going to, of course, become very challenging, and it's by absolutely no means a walk in the park. Also, what it is not is like this sort of graphical overhaul where the game's going to look better, it's going to sound better or anything like that. There is nothing sort of audio-visual that has been modded in this mod, aside from enemies actually using new animations that you wouldn't have seen before, like mixing together, let's say, Sin's Giga Graviton animation with a Fiend that normally wouldn't use a move like that, for example. That's the kind of thing you will be seeing, but it's not this sort of enhancement mod for anything other than the gameplay experience. Pbirdman also hasn't, of course, intervened with anything sort of story related. He hasn't added or changed any dialogue or messed around with anything sort of to do with the meat of the story. What he has done, which I think is a nice touch, is to introduce a few little extra bits of lore related to the Dark Aeons. This is stuff that he came up with himself, some ideas that he had, and there are going to be NPCs that reference the Dark Aeons and Penance in more ways than they did in the vanilla. So either you can find these out yourself while you're playing through and see if you stumble across any of the new dialogue, or there is a document that comes with the installation files that will give you an idea of which NPCs to look for finding new dialogue in the mod. Before I get to the actual installation of the mod, there's a couple more things that I want to talk about as like miscellaneous things that I think is relevant for you guys to know. In terms of the project and who Pbirdman is, he is someone who has taught himself how to hack and manipulate the game's information. He does not come from like an IT or computing background. He doesn't work in that sort of field. He's just someone who had a lot of love for the game and wanted to find out how he could tinker with the game's data to create a different kind of experience. He's had to think about and reconstruct countless battles while trying to make sure that there is still this sort of fairly smooth climb in difficulty as you go throughout. He had to try to make the mod break-proof to not come up with strategies that completely ruin all of his hard work, but also to try and leave a bit of room for creativity and to win in ways that he didn't think of as well in a lot of cases. So because it's just him and there's only so much that you can expect one person to do, absolutely every single mechanic or item has not been overhauled, and of course there is no way that he can cater to absolutely everyone's demands and requirements for the mod, but I do genuinely think that it is worth giving it a go. He has done some absolutely genius work in this mod. Some of the changes that he's made and some of the mechanics that he's thought of, they really have blown my mind. So I definitely want people to try this out. He has made this for you guys. I was the one who had the privilege of testing and providing feedback for the entirety of the mod, but the overall goal was always, of course, to have as many people play it and enjoy it as possible. So I strongly recommend as many of you guys to give it a go as possible. And finally, my personal involvement with the mod has not been to do with actually making the mod. The mod had already got to a almost complete state by the time I ever touched it. I was just a lucky person who got to test the mod from start to finish. I was the first one to basically make it past, I think it was around the Calmlands or Bevel or something like that. And from there onwards it was pretty much I was the only person who had ever tested the mod. I provided all of the feedback I could over the past 2 years. We did a lot of discussing about battles, what I thought was good, what could be made better, ideas and all of that kind of stuff. But when it comes to the genesis of the mod, putting in like the actual work to mod the game, making all of the updates, creating all the patches, having the overall vision for the project, and all of the final decisions, it has all been Pbirdman. So I just want to make that absolutely clear. It is by no means my mod. I'm just a very lucky person who got to test it and provide feedback on it. So let's get to an important topic here about the availability of the mod and how you can play it. The mod began in 2011, like I said. That was years before the Final Fantasy X remaster ever came out for PS3, PS4 and Steam. For that reason, a lot of work was already done on the mod for the PS2 version running on Emulator, and that's the one that Pbirdman wanted to continue with and complete to the best of his ability. So that means that as of this current moment, it is only playable on a PS2 emulator. So you need to have like a laptop or a PC or something like that to play the game. Maybe in the future, like with Steam Decks and these portable mini PCs or something like that, you could have it on there potentially and play it on the go. But as of making this video, I don't think there's really any options for that. So unfortunately, it is not available for the HD remaster at this current time. If that changes, just check the description of the video. I will make it clear if Pbirdman is ever able to sort of copy the mod over to the Steam version. Based on what we know so far, it's not as simple as sort of copy and pasting everything he did for the PS2 version, and it's something that I'm hoping he'll be able to look into once everything to do with this mod is completely wrapped up and maybe he has some more free time to check it out. Of course, it would have been great if it was available for the HD remaster, but it isn't. Though I do think the emulator is a really good way to play it. It does have its own bonuses as well. I do think, you know, if you are after a bit of that nostalgia factor, if it's been a long time since you played, for example, or you like the aesthetics of the PS2 original more than the remaster, you can still speed up the emulation, so grinding and farming can become easier as well. Especially these days, you don't need a particularly powerful laptop or anything to run the game, so it still remains pretty portable and fairly easy to access. You have save states at your disposal, so that can make your playthrough a lot easier as well. But of course, I appreciate that it would have been best if it was available for the HD remaster. But that's where we're at the moment. If it changes, I will probably make like some kind of announcement video, and it will also be updated in the description anyway. But for now, that is not the case. PC emulation only. This video is already going to be very long and very detailed, and I want it to be focused on the Pbirdman mod itself. If you've never used a PS2 emulator before and you have no idea how it works, that's something that's not going to be covered in the scope of this video. I'll try to put 1 or 2 links that could be useful to you in the description if you're completely unfamiliar with emulation and you still want to try the Pbirdman mod. But in terms of sort of how to do it all, that's not something that's going to be in the scope of this video. So that's something you'll have to research for yourselves, and I'll be providing pointers in the description if you need help. So by now, I'm hoping you're already sold on giving the Pbirdman mod a go, and you have your emulator and your copy of Final Fantasy X ready to go. From here on, I'm going to be basically showing you guys in real time how I install the patch and how I get the game going. So let's begin. Okay my friends, let me talk you through the actual downloading and installation of the patch so that you can get the thing running on your laptop or PC. So what you need to do is click the link in the description, I'm not sure if he's going to be using this site to host it long term, but for now this is the site that I've been using to get the patches, and it's likely that it's going to be the same one for you guys too. So you're going to see a page that looks like this with Pbirdman Final Fantasy X the challenge and a version number for you to download. So you download it. Obviously, because it's a patch, it's only 17 megabytes. It's not like the size of an entire game or anything like that. Then once you've downloaded it, it's going to be in a WinRAR file, so make sure you've got like some sort of WinRAR, WinZip kind of thing to open the mod. Then once you've extracted it, what you're going to have is something that looks like this. Ignore this Final Fantasy X to int for now, just this is what we're going to be focusing on. And this right here is all of the patch files that you're going to need. So before I get into it, he does have, of course, a README installation file. So this is already going to walk you through what you need for the mod. But I'm just going to show you guys like a practical version of actually installing it. So of course you can just read through and do it with that anyway, and you can refer to that too. But I've sort of done it already, and this is how you do it. Now, what you need is your copy of Final Fantasy X, so it needs to be like a copy of the disc. That's why it's the same size as like a DVD disc file, 4.5 gig. You need to rename the ISO file to Final Fantasy X-2 International. I don't know why, but this is just how it works. It's not something that we're going to question here. But once you've named it to that, I put it in here where the rest of the content is. And then you have a file called Final Fantasy X-2 Toolpack. This is the one that's basically going to get everything done for you. Now, for some reason, in more recent patches, I've had an issue where my antivirus has been picking this up as a virus. Honestly, we've obviously checked it as best we can, and there's obviously no problems to do with it. It's the same Toolpack file that I've been using for the last 2 years. I've used it literally like 50 times now, and it's always been absolutely fine. So it's not something you need to worry about. It's a false positive. But if you do have antivirus now, you should probably switch it off, because if you don't, it's going to like interrupt it and it's going to mess with the installation. So what I'd recommend is maybe just to disconnect from the internet and then to disable your antivirus so that you can get this thing installed. Okay, so once your antivirus is out of the way and isn't going to be a nuisance, you can actually get to work and install the patch. So remember, make sure you've got your ISO file in there and it's named exactly as you see it here. All of these notes are going to be in here anyway, but I'm just showing you visually so you can get an idea too. So this is the tool pack, and then you just need to click 2 buttons to basically install the whole thing. So first is ISO unpack. Maybe it depends on like your processor and all that kind of stuff, how quickly it does it, but generally it doesn't take more than like 30 seconds, something like that. So it shouldn't be too bad. Okay, so after you click it and it runs through, it should just say ready with the green bar. Then you literally just press repack. And what this is going to do is basically create a second ISO file that is going to be your patched version of the game. So this again maybe takes like 30 seconds, something like that. And I think it was like around during the repack stage, I think maybe my antivirus started flagging it for like the last month or 2. But before that it was always fine. So yeah, you can see it building the second ISO file here. Once you're done, technically you don't need this one again, but I'd always keep the original copy around in case you want to do like a new patch version of the game, there's an update out or something like that, because you don't want to sort of patch one that you've already patched. So keep this sort of fresh one available at all times for future patches potentially, or any issues that you run into. So that's almost done. Okay, so as you can see, it's slightly bigger. It's like 2,500 KB bigger than the previous one, but this is the file that you're going to be working with, and this is the one that actually allows you to play the modded version of Final Fantasy X. So now we have to open our emulator, which I have here. Again, if you don't know what this emulator is or how to install it or what the config settings should be, all of that kind of stuff, it's probably best to consult the description of the video and sort of do a bit of Googling to find out how to install all of this stuff and how to make it work. Okay, so once you're ready to go, all you need to do is to select the correct ISO, so make sure that you're in the right sort of folder and you have Final Fantasy X-2 International Repack. Select that, and then once you fire up your emulator, you should be on the right one. And let's just have a quick look. I'm pretty sure once you go into new game, you'll be able to tell that this is the Pbirdman mod pretty soon. So let's have a quick look just in case. Okay, so I fired it up, and now I want to just show you guys what it looks like, just to make sure that you know that you're working with the Pbirdman mod. Right, so let's go with new game as a first installation. There you go. So you will know very, very soon that this is the Pbirdman mod. So obviously if it doesn't have all of this kind of text here, then you know that for some reason it hasn't worked and you should consult the install notes again. Check the video again, or if both of those things don't work, then maybe drop a comment in the video and maybe me or Pbirdman or someone else who successfully installed it will be able to help you. So this, my friends, is how you install the mod itself, and from here on it's literally just like Final Fantasy X, like your normal vanilla run. There is no expert sphere grid for the Pbirdman mod. That's just like a little sort of detail, because he'd basically have to mod the entire expert grid as well, and it's not something he wants. So standard sphere grid has already been modified from the vanilla version, and that's the only one that you can use for the run. So that's all I'm going to show you in terms of actually starting the game. Okay then, hopefully by this stage you have successfully downloaded and installed the Pbirdman mod. Now it's time for more notes about the mod itself, both in terms of Pbirdman's notes and in terms of what I've discovered through my testing. First things first, let's have a look at the installation files again. You have this one, and this already gives you instructions on how to install, and then you have important, read this part. And this is where he gives you some spoiler-free but important information about the mod that you will need. So I'm not going to read through every single one of these. Some of them are pretty specific, but it's definitely something that you should be reading before you get started with the mod. What I'm going to do is add in some of my own observations from my own run with the game. The first thing that I think is important to know is, at the end of the day, this is still an emulated version of the game. Even if you're not playing a modded version, sometimes things can just go wrong and things can get corrupted. You can have a crash, you can have a power cut, you can have the game hang, whatever it might be. Especially, I think, for the Pbirdman mod, because obviously the code of the game has been changed. It is more liable to crash than a vanilla version of the game. Therefore, I would recommend strongly to use save states throughout your playthrough. So I don't have any right now in this, but make sure you are using save states and don't let yourself have, like, you know, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever, without having done any saves at all. If, let's say, you're in a particularly tough area and the next save sphere is quite far away still, just make sure you're save stating along the way so that you don't lose a lot of progress. Definitely highly recommended to keep a bunch of save states as you play through, alongside your normal saves. The only problem with save states is that in the future, if there's going to be an updated version of the patch for whatever reason, the save states that you had from the previous version are no longer going to work. So just bear that in mind. Make sure you have an actual legit save file and don't rely on save states as your most recent save when installing a new patch, because they're not going to work properly with an updated version. Something that kind of bugged me while I was playing the game was that I noticed the game was really slow. I'd gotten used to playing like the Steam version and the PS4 version. This one was slow enough as it is because it's like the sort of PAL version of the game, but also I believe, again, because of all the extra code in the game, it doesn't run quite as fast as it normally does on the emulator. So it's a bit frustrating because the music sounds normal and is in sync as it should be, but visually things move really slowly, and especially for longer battles it really does drag things out. It just doesn't feel as fluid as it should be. Now, unfortunately, because it's the emulated version, what you can't do is sort of just put in, you know, 150% speed and then just have everything sound normal, because the music is going to speed up as well. If you don't need the music, then of course you just play it at whatever speed you want to play. If you don't care about the dialogue, or you're in like a grinding phase and you just want to farm for stuff, of course put it on like 200%, 250%, 300%, and that's totally fine. But if you want to sort of experience things in a more realistic, real-time kind of manner, what I discovered that worked well enough for me personally was to go into the settings and make the base frame rate 105%. Technically this speeds the music up 5%, but honestly I did a test in a live stream and most people did not catch it, that it had sped up by 5%. And so it's something that you will notice when you first do it, but your ears get used to it pretty quickly, and you do get a nice little benefit of that extra 5%, smoothing things out for you a little, and the frame rate doesn't feel quite as slow and lethargic and potentially annoying as it does at 100%. But it's something that you can play around with yourself. Maybe even 102, 103% helps. Maybe you can push it to 106, 107 and it still sounds okay to you. But it's just something that I personally did, and for most of my run I just stuck with 105% in the later stages because it just worked best. So that's just something that's like personal advice from me for when you are playing the mod. In terms of how much grinding is there going to be, how long is the playthrough going to be, and those kinds of things, again, my personal experience as the first and only person that tried this thing, my save file, if you want to go all the way and defeat penance as well and truly have a complete run of the mod, it took me guaranteed over 220 hours, but if you include shortcuts I took for farming so that I could actually create content and focus more on the actual battles and the videos and the uploads instead of just farming for stuff, then it's looking more likely to be 250 plus for the way that I played. So you are looking at pretty much a guaranteed run of over 200 hours if you want to do absolutely everything and you don't want to hack in or cheat for the stats. More than half of this time is going to be for the post game, so it's not the case that it's like 150 hours to defeat Braska's Fine Leon and then it's just like an extra 70 on top to defeat the rest. I'm pretty sure that you can get everything defeated in the story in less than 100 hours, but the whole thing will be extremely long. So be prepared for months, potentially years of investment if you want to do absolutely everything in the mod, and you want to do it without the use of any hacking. Now, one of the main reasons I wanted to do this video is because I could show you guys how to use something called Final Fantasy Editor. If you've watched the playthrough, you would have heard me talk about it multiple times, but I want to give you guys a quick demo of how it works. Okay, so the folder that you see here contains a whole bunch of like extra stuff. This is like the folder that I was working with for the last 2 years to actually get all the new patches and upload content and all of that kind of stuff. So in here I have two things that are going to be important. The first is this one, and I'll include a link to this in the description. This is basically like a memory card application that's going to allow you to import and export saves from your emulated memory card. So this is essential. And then the second is, of course, Final Fantasy X Editor itself. So these are the two things that you're going to need. Once you've downloaded and installed those, again, keep these wherever you've installed the rest of the patch and all that kind of stuff. I think keep this stuff together so that it's all in one place. And once that's done, I use like the GUI version. And what it's going to want is the memory cards that you're using for the emulator. So you need to go in here, get your memory card, and then what you'll see here is all of your save files. So whatever one you're working with, let's pick an early one. Let's say something like this. So what you want to do is you want to export this. Stick it somewhere like there. And then that has exported successfully. Okay, so once you're done with that, what I would personally recommend that you do, is just so that you don't screw up your save here, is this save that you have here, the unedited, unhacked one, make another copy of this somewhere. Just in case you screw it up and you put it back in and for some reason it's just not working, you don't want to lose your original save. So make a copy. Okay, so now I'm going to fire up Final Fantasy X Editor and I'm going to show you guys how it works. Very, very simple little program. You need to make sure you have Java installed, by the way. That's another sort of important caveat. I'll link to where the original creator of Final Fantasy X Editor has posted. If you run into any issues, that should hopefully show you what to do. So, no save loaded. Let's load that save that we extracted using my MC. Okay, here it is. Load it up. And all of these should be accessible to you. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. I'm not literally going to walk through everything, but in here you'll see that you can basically modify everything for everybody. Please use this with a lot of caution, and if you are going to do any sort of major changes, you would do well to make sure that you test things first. So try not to do anything too drastic, and make sure you test things like what's the difference between current HP, base HP, current MP, base MP, and all of this kind of stuff. Just be very careful. You can screw up stuff if you mess around too much with Final Fantasy X editor. Like I say, it would take me way too long to go through this entire thing, but what is available to you here is to basically have whatever stats you want all of the time. And that's why in general it's an extremely powerful tool, but it should be used with a lot of caution. I would say, personally, the safest way to make sure you don't screw anything up is to not really mess around with character stuff. What you can do, for example, a good one is to go into equipment. Let's say you need to do something like you want to have AP farming weapons, or you want to have like ultimate armors for Dark Aeons and Penance and all that kind of stuff. Again, whether or not it's right to do this or not is completely like, that side of it doesn't really concern me. I think it's just fair to give people the option and to let them know how to use it. If you don't want to use it, that's obviously your choice, and I would recommend to minimally intervene using Final Fantasy X editor in your run. But I understand people got lives, people got shit to do. Not everyone's got 300 hours to do everything completely manually. So this is going to hopefully help you. Now, what you can do is to basically like create armors and weapons that you need. So like an empty slot here, you can turn it into an occupied slot. Let's say you want to make something for Tidus. Honestly, if you really want to know specifically, you can research to be like, what should this weapon be called technically so that it's correct. But the good thing here is, I guess, it doesn't really matter. What matters is what the weapon can do rather than its name. So you could just literally call it anything like Gravestone. Appearance, again, based on what abilities are on the weapon, the appearance changes, but for the most part, you're not going to know what this is. So you could just go with something else that you like. It's not that important. Damage formula, again, this is something that you can use. You can just check the other weapons just to make sure that it matches up with those. Attack power 16 is the standard, critical hit percent 3 is the standard, and you can choose how many slots the thing has. Let's say you're going with 3, and then here you can have, let's say, your triple AP, triple overdrive, and then you can have overdrive to AP. So then you click apply, apply and close. So in slot 112 you've got a weapon called Gravestone, which is not the correct name for the thing, but it sounds pretty cool. And this is going to be Tidus's stat maxing weapon if that's what you need. So this is your AP farming weapon. And obviously I would recommend maxing all of the characters as you go if you can. And so you can just make as many of these as you need to save yourself the time killing one eye over and over again, farming for the stuff needed to get, like, I don't know, triple overdrive, a double overdrive, overdrive to AP, and those kind of things. So what I would do is probably get the first ones legit so that you still feel like you've done the process, but when it comes to actually repeating and farming, that's probably a better time to use Final Fantasy X editor rather than just do everything from the start and never do any of it manually. So that's an example of how you can use it. Again, the same deal with the armor. If you want to have, let's say you want a Dark Aeon and Penance armor at the ready to either test or do whatever. Where is it? It's weapons first here. Yeah, so again, who the hell knows which shield it is, it doesn't matter too much. Type, armor, normal. Obviously the attack power is irrelevant, but I'd put 3 anyway. Put that there. You can have like your ribbon, for example, instead of farming 99 dark matters every time. There are ways to do it that's not too painful, but if you're just not interested in the grind at all, then this is definitely going to be a lifesaver for you. I think, and Pbirdman I'm sure also thinks, that it's better for people to be attempting the battles than kind of being too daunted by how much grinding it needs and then saying I'm quitting this because I just don't have the time to continue. So this is where Final Fantasy X Editor comes in. It keeps people playing and it keeps you focusing on the bits that to me is the most important, which is the actual battles themselves. So this is something that you can use to really help your run. That's equipment. Another very important one is of course items. It's fairly self-explanatory. Again, you've already got your slot here. You can change stuff to 99. Let's say you don't have something. You come down to like where it starts saying nothing. Go to your nothing slot. Put in 99 of dark matter, let's say. You want to put a ribbon on someone. It's a bit weird because you have like literally names of moves here, and this is why you could just mess things up so like seriously if you're not careful. So you could put something like dark matter there, so you can instantly get 99 dark matters. What you can't do, unfortunately, I kind of tested this by accident, is you have 99 here. Let's say slot 63, you're like, you know what, why don't I just give myself a bunch of 99 slots here so that I can just not have to deal with it again. It doesn't work. So if you do another dark matter here with 99, when you use one of this slot is going to reduce as well. So you can't kind of cheat the system with that, unfortunately. You can use this for things like fortune spheres, for example. You can use them for dark matters. You can use them for HP spheres. Again, with this, use discretion. Don't try to give yourself 99 dark matters while you're in Besaid. Wait until you can actually get those items consistently, but use Final Fantasy X Editor to save you the time. I think that's the most reasonable and fair way to use it. Don't give yourself things that you realistically wouldn't have or that it would be impossible for you to have, and just don't overly abuse it. Just use it to save yourself time rather than make things easier for you in battle. Okay. That's another one. Sphere Grid, again, really use with caution. I don't recommend playing with the Sphere Grid stuff. You can very easily screw this up, so use at your discretion. If you want to experiment with it, be my guest. I'm not going to talk through everything to do with it, but it is it's a bit of a dangerous one to mess with, and I personally wouldn't. This one, again, if you've missed a destruction sphere for whatever reason, this is something you can fix up here. Lightning bolts, I guess you can skip the dodging. I've never done it personally, but this is something that you can do. Miscellaneous. This stuff here, for example, you can select which Dark Aeons have been defeated, which are disabled, which are enabled. That's so useful. And of course there's extra options here like capture all the monsters and any other things that you might be needing. So this is a pretty powerful and important page as well. So that's generally what you need, and once you've kind of tinkered with things and you have the save file where you want it, if you click save, it's literally going to save over the save file that you already have. This one in particular, that's why I said make a copy without any changes just in case things go wrong. But for this test, we'll just do it anyway. Just click save, and then what you need to do, go back to your memory card editor thing. This is the one that we exported. We need to get rid of this. So then you go to delete. You can confirm that. That save file is gone. And then you just go to import the edited version of your save file. Import that in. And now you should be ready to go. And in slot number 3, it should have the edited version of your file. So that's how you use Final Fantasy X Editor. Again, I haven't gone super in depth, so this video isn't like 5 hours long. And honestly, I'm not an expert on it. I just kind of, sometimes I get things wrong too. But just as a general idea of how to use it, I hope that's helpful. If you have any questions about it, put them in the comments and I'll try to help you guys if you're struggling. But it's another one of these things that there are a lot of online resources on how to use it, and with a little bit of experimentation as well, it should be fine, and you'll be able to save yourself a lot of grinding time. The next thing I want to refer to is an episode in the playlist that actually has a pretty important mistake in it. So far, in general, everything that you've seen in my videos, if you have been watching the playlist, it should be things that you're able to replicate yourselves in your own playthrough. If not, it's something that I probably would have mentioned in the video saying like I did this, but in the public release it's likely to no longer be an option. But for almost all of it you can pretty much do exactly what I did and get similar results. But there is one exception that both me and Pbirdman did not catch, but some knowledgeable members of the viewership managed to catch it and let us know, and it's something that has been dealt with. So what exactly was the issue? There is a particular battle in the playlist, it's against the Dark Magus sisters, in which I gave my Aeons maximum HP. The reason I did this was because we needed to survive Delta attack, and we needed a situation where basically your Aeon could survive the 2 attacks that happened before Delta attack. And originally, the way Pbirdman modded things, the attacks were so powerful that the only way it seemed to guarantee survival was to make sure that your Aeons had max stats and you shielded so that you didn't die. Now that seemed fine to me at the time, and I just went into Final Fantasy Editor, gave my Aeons max stats, went into the battle, and I won. But there is an important thing that both me and Pbirdman forgot with that particular strategy. The problem is that with the Aeons you cannot get maximum HP just by maxing Yuna. And it's something I hadn't done in so long that I completely forgot about it, but even if you give Yuna 99,999 HP, her Aeons will still be stuck at around like 15 to 40,000 I believe, like the highest one is around 35-40. So for that reason, the stats that you see the Aeons having in that Dark Magus Sisters video is not realistic. It's something you would have had to have farmed for absolutely hours and hours and hours, and that's not what's supposed to have been needed to defeat that particular battle. So once I was alerted to it, I made sure Pbirdman was made aware as well, and what he did was to basically mod the battle in a way that even if your Aeons have about 15 to 20,000 HP, which is completely natural based on Yuna's stats, as long as you shield, there is no chance of you being wiped out before Delta attack. So the absolute max stat Aeons that you see in that situation, they are not necessary. You can get by without ever having to add any HP to your Aeons beyond what's natural from their growth with Yuna's Sphere Grid. So that's an important thing I want to note, because it's like a completely ridiculous level of farming that's absolutely not necessary to defeat the mod that I wasn't aware was even farming at the time. So that's something important to note as well. For anyone curious about Zanmato, what if I get stuck in the mod, can I just Zanmato my way through? No, you cannot. This is of course, the Pbirdman mod is designed to be a challenge. It's not something that you can just Zanmato your way out of. So the move itself has been modified in a way that you cannot just end the battle with Zanmato, no matter how much gil you throw at Yojimbo. In the installation files, once again, what we have here is something called changes log, and this one, as the name suggests, is a giant list of everything that has been changed in the Pbirdman mod. Now, there's a few things here that you can generally have a look at, I think. So on here, for example, Sphere Grid alterations, I think it's obviously fair to have a look at this to see what's changed before you go into it or while you're playing. Lets you know about a Sphere Grid glitch that's present. Then there's some general stuff here that, again, I think is fine to read. I think it's important. There's new items that have been added for the mod, which I think, again, is relevant for you to know what exactly they do. And some items have been modified in terms of their effects. So again, these are changes. So either they're weaker than before, or maybe they're, like, if they're a status effect, their affliction percentage has fallen, and all that kind of stuff. So these are important to look at. If you're sort of a mechanics person and you want to know, like, what's my percentage chance of inflicting silence with a silence grenade against a boss that has 80% resistance to it, you need to consult this to make sure you're aware of what the changes are. So definitely consult this before. There's character attack changes too that is going to be relevant. Again, some percentage changes, MP cost changes, power changes, and all that kind of stuff. Again, we're not going through every single one. There's overdrive changes, so no more attack reels cheese. This is going to be hitting for a lot less than it did in vanilla, so it's just a quick note on that. What I personally think though, and what you shouldn't do is to come down to relevant section. And again, hopefully this is giving you a feel for just how many changes have been put in. But I have reached the enemy changes section. From here onwards, I personally believe you should not read this unless you get stuck. Because here is of course basically the way to sort of unlock and figure out every single enemy. There's lots of nice surprises in here, there's lots of really nice mechanics that's really satisfying to figure out. So if you just go in and you read every single change and you know everything already, I think it does take away a large element of the fun and of the challenge. So I play through basically by not reading any enemy changes before attempting the battle. If you hit a brick wall and it's driving you insane and you've got to know how a mechanic works, or trying to find a weakness by looking at the enemy data, then yes, this is where you need to go. Basically, it's going to include absolutely every change that has been present in the entire mod. But like I say, use it with caution and don't just research the entire mod and go into every single battle already knowing what the enemy is going to do, because it's going to take away a lot of the fun. One thing that a lot of players do, me included, is to not really level up Kimahri for the run. And in general, of course, Tidus, Waka, Riku is such a powerful team that a lot of us, especially if we played the game before or we've watched people play the game and we know what's sort of optimal, a lot of players just go for that combination anyway and just take it through to the end. Now, having done that myself, obviously one thing I also wanted to test was, can I just keep that team? And is it enough just to max 3 characters and ignore everybody else? The answer to that is no. But you can get very far just with 3 of them. But can you complete the entire mod, including Penance, with just Tidus, Waka and Riku? I'm pretty sure the answer is no. It might be possible, but it seems very close to impossible. So it's going to be a mod where hopefully using your other characters is going to be more valuable than it was in vanilla. So for starters, there's going to be more magic needed than there was in vanilla. It's not, I would say, a complete overhaul. Like the magic damage formula is still weaker than physical, and for maybe like 80 to 90% of the harder battles in the game, it's still largely going to be physical attacks that are going to win the battles. But there's more situations in which having a powerful mage character is going to help you out a lot, and sometimes where it's basically mandatory for you to use magic to win. So that's something that I think is going to be nice, because it's going to keep Lulu involved more in the game as you go further on. But another thing that Pbirdman has tried to do, and that in hindsight I think is important to note as well, is due to the way the celestial weapons work, he's tried to balance out the maxed version of the characters a little bit, so that they don't all end up being the same, also that it's not the same characters being OP in every situation. So if, let's say, you actually invested in Kimahri and you brought him up to max stats, there are going to be situations where Kimahri would actually have been a better option than Tidus or Waka in a battle. So for the Pbirdman mod, I would recommend players to upgrade everybody as best as they can along the way, and try not to completely forget about Kimahri as you move along as well. So I say every character pretty much has its own usefulness in battle. Do you have to use them all? Definitely not. But do you need to use more than 3? Pretty much definitely. So somewhere in between sort of just using 3 and needing to use all of them, that's going to be your sort of sweet spot. So I definitely experiment with the characters once you get their celestial weapons, and see if there's certain characters that could be actually more useful to you than the ones I used in my playthrough of the mod. Okay, so that was some extensive notes and advice based on my own playthrough that wasn't literally related to how to win battles and tactics and strategy and all that kind of stuff. All I have left is for some final extra notes before we finish this thing up. If you need any help or advice in terms of battle stuff, like you're stuck on a battle and you can't win and that kind of thing, that's something I would probably comment on the relevant video in the playlist and see if there's people going through that could also help you. Obviously, I have videos of every single boss being defeated, and the versions that I've defeated should be, by and large, either identical or very, very, very similar to the ones that you're fighting against in your playthrough. So I think a combination of obviously having my versions of the battles uploaded, plus the comment sections, should hopefully help you to defeat everything that you need to defeat. If you have an issue related to the mod, so you're running into, let's say, a repeated crash, or there's something that you believe is definitely wrong with the mod that needs to be fixed, this video is a good place to basically send us like bug reports. So try to keep the comment section relevant to helping people out or to asking relevant questions. I'll probably delete comments that are unrelated to those things because I want to keep it sort of focused on the mod itself and to help people out. So if your comment is just great job guys, like we appreciate it of course, but it's something I'll probably remove because it's not going to help people that are reading through. So this video is the place to post comments if you have run into bugs or have issues that you think Pbirdman needs to fix, or if there's an update that needs to be made to the mod. If there are issues that require an updated version of the mod, I will be changing the link in the description and letting people know of the date for which this patch is relevant. So it's something that if you do encounter an issue in your playthrough, check the description and see if you are playing the most recent and most updated version of the patch. If not, then you can install the newer version of the patch and follow the instructions that you saw near at the beginning of the video. All you'd have to do is basically take that Final Fantasy II International, the unpatched file, and copy that into the new installation directory that you have, and basically delete all of the other old stuff that you're not going to be using anymore from the previous patch. And then you can get going with the most recent one. One thing I wanted to make sure was I didn't want my channel or this video or the playlist in general to be the only place that you can download the mod. I made that very clear to Pbirdman because it is his mod, and my channel shouldn't be like the only place which you can access it. So for that reason, again, you can check the description for other places in which you can download the mod. I don't know what they exactly are at this point. I wanted to record this in advance and have it prepared, but whatever that is going to be, it will be in the description, and that's something that you should bookmark and have saved as well, just in case for whatever reason something happens to this video, something happens to this channel, and then you won't have a way to download the mod in the future or to find updated patches. So do make sure you check out the alternative place to download it and keep that saved in your bookmarks as well for future reference. Okay, I think that just about wraps up everything that I want to say. It's one of these videos where, again, I could have probably sat down for 5 hours and gone through even more stuff, but this is sort of a list of bullet points that I had that I think is particularly relevant and that I think is important for you guys to know before you download and during your playthrough of the mod. So once again, I of course want to thank everybody that's taken the time over the last 2 years to watch this enormous series. It's been absolutely epic and it's been really fun from my perspective. So many people have messaged me to just say how like their Saturdays were sort of, you know, Pbirdman mod day, and a lot of people were looking forward to it. And I think Pbirdman really loved seeing all of the feedback and all of the positive comments and all of the excitement in the build up to the release of the public version. So just thank you to everybody that supported this series the whole way. It's thanks to you guys that we're able to release this thing now. And we just really hope that as many of you guys will download it and enjoy it as possible. I've done everything I can. I've used all of my experience and all of my knowledge and dedicated as much time and attention to it as I can. And Pbirdman has been doing that for the past 10 years in constructing this mod. So this is sort of the fruits of his labor. We really hope you guys enjoy it, and it's a way for members of the community to jump back in and enjoy Final Fantasy X like they've never enjoyed it before. Thank you for watching. Take care.